Hi, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for being here with us today. So, this is our first Facebook Live. So, we are actually learning in the process. So, bear with us a little bit.
Right.
We actually just had a conversation that we'll try not to swear or giggle. So, anyways, welcome. This is a weekly series that we'll be hosting on Facebook Live. And what it is that we're going to have different experts come in from our team. So I am Catherine Blake. I'm a certified divorce coach, and I work with a team of professionals. We're called Vesta North, and it's basically every single kind of service you can imagine under the sun for helping people contemplating, going through, and post-divorce. So we have attorneys, we have mediators, we have certified divorce financial analysts, we have trainers, we have stylists, we have real estate agents, we have mortgage brokers, we have dating coaches, yoga instructors, massage therapists, kind of anything that you could ever need at this transition in your life, we have. So at different times, different people will be coming in to speak to you guys. We really are all about education, empowerment, and connection. And we think the more information you have, the easier your divorce process is going to go. And so that's why we're here. I would love for people, and I actually got some questions today. So thank you, people, for sending questions. That's awesome. But please, by all means, feel free to send me your divorce stories, and it will be disguised. I'm not going to show any information online. It's all confidential, but that actually helps me know what kind of topics people want to learn more about. Or send me questions. Send us anything, and we'll make sure we get that out to you. So welcome. I'm just going to go really briefly and talk about myself. I'm a certified divorce coach. I come to divorce coaching after being a child and family psychotherapist for 20 plus years. And I don't know if you guys know the statistics, but 50% of first marriages end in divorce. So what I realized is that I was needing to become an expert on divorce. And when I looked back through the research so that I could actually guide the families I was working with in the best way I could, there wasn't actually much research. There really wasn't much out there to help me help my families. And then about 10 years ago, I went through my own very high conflict divorce, made probably every single emotionally driven, reactive decision I could make through the process. And it ended up costing me a whole lot of money. And so I came out the other end of that, just really wanting to change the face of divorce. I really want to make this process better for people because right now I think it's old-fashioned, it's outdated, and I think it actually ends up really hurting families more than helping them. And so that's why I'm here. And I figured the beginning stages, the first guest I would bring on is my wonderful, I love this woman, Kelly Maguire, and she is an attorney and a mediator here in Andover. And what she's going to do today is actually give you a little education. She's actually going to tell you about the fact that there are 4 different ways to get divorced. And I absolutely had no idea about that. I wish I knew that when I got divorced because I just assumed it was you hire your attorney, your ex hires an attorney, and you fight in court. And I even had fantasies of a jury being there and a judge looking down, over at me and saying, right, saying you're right, and I can see that your ex is so difficult, Miss Blake. And that's absolutely not at all how the process went. And I want you guys to realize that you do have different options besides that one. So here's Kelly. She's going to give you a little intro.
Hello. Hi, thanks, Kat. I'm Kelly Maguire. I am a family law attorney. I have been one. I worked at a firm for a while and just recently have gone out on my own. Prior to that, I was home for a while with the kids, and before that worked. This is very technical. Prior to that, I was a death investigator for the morgue, so that's where the death humor comes in at some point. I'm sure it will, or at least on this end, we will be laughing.
Yes, there might be some inappropriate jokes going on.
Right.
We apologize beforehand.
In advance. So there's really no one set way to be able to get divorced. It's sort of, when I meet with clients, it's one fit. It fits for each situation. So there's mediation. People have the ability to go to mediation. Completely voluntary. Usually choose a mediator that can be an attorney. It doesn't have to be. It's sometimes best if the mediator ends up writing the separation agreement, if you reach an agreement, it's good to have an attorney do that has experience doing that. Mediation, though, is voluntary. It's sort of just somebody helping facilitate. You have collaborative law, which is a little bit more intensive, I guess you could say. Everybody has attorneys. There's also the collaborator that's there. You have experts. You're going to hire it. It's a little bit less expensive in the sense that you would agree on an expert rather than have individual experts and then battle over which number is used. Usually the goal there is that you're going to have an agreement when you're finished with the collaboration, that you stick it out until it's done, and that attorneys usually will agree on either side. Neither one of them will go ahead and file in court. It's not going to be anything without the permission or advance notice. It's not going to be a regular litigation. You can be pro se. You can be on your own. The one thing in Massachusetts in family law is you don't need an attorney. You can represent yourself. A lot of if you call local bar organizations like here, the Essex Bar Association, they can tell you each court has a lawyer of the day. You wait in line, but you can have free legal advice. You speak to them, and it's a great resource. They help you fill out the paperwork. Or you can just go the litigation route where you're hiring an attorney, and the goal is that you're either going to have a separation agreement or you're going to have a court order from a judge after a trial, which, contrary to what people think, most people don't end up
in front of a judge.
Trial. Yes, less likely you're going to have a trial in a family law case than not. It doesn't mean that it's not possible, but it's just a matter of weighing how much you're going to spend to what are you trying to get.
Right.
And
you actually want to try to avoid trial as much as possible, because I would
trials
say
are very expensive.
That's throwing tens of thousands of dollars right out the window.
Right. So. Right. It's a lot of money depending on what the issue is. And you can hire a lawyer and you can still mediate, or you can hire a lawyer and you still can have a meeting with the lawyers in the office. You can sort of cut it and paste it depending on how you go. And it's flexible that if you file jointly and it turns out you don't have an agreement, that can be transferred into a contested, or vice versa. If one person files, it can always be turned into a joint petition. So you're not stuck with whatever you start with. It's just whatever works best. And you have to be flexible because it depends on, there's so many moving parts, both attorneys,
just checking questions,
both parties. This is crazy.
So I have a question. Can you maybe share a little bit more about like what collaborative law looks like? And maybe I'm totally wrong on this understanding, but is it that all the professionals get into one room together and they basically stay there until they hammer out an agreement?
Yes, that's the goal. Is that so you have to have an attorney. I'm not a collaborative law. You have to be trained for that. You go through a training, and then what happens is everybody's together. It's what if you need a business valuator, if you need a psychologist or a therapist, and so you agree on all those. You each have your attorneys in each parties and the main person that's organizing it and working through the case. So it's almost like you're getting the litigation portion where you can get the experts if you need it, but you're spending less because you're agreeing, and you're also getting the mediation. It's private. You're not battling it out in court. You're battling it out in a room. So there's still the fees, and that's more of a specialized, maybe more those that need privacy. Or
right. So do you think, in your opinion, do you think that that's actually cheaper? Or
I think that any one can be as expensive. You can go to an attorney and you can have a separation drawn up for several $1,000s and be done with it, and file and don't have them go to court. Or you can have mediation, which is usually are 2-hour sessions. But if you have 20 2-hour sessions and never reach resolution, then you end up back at square one, or not square one, but you've resolved some things, but you still now have to file in court.
Right.
So it's sort of how, Vesta, the main thing we talk about, I think, is doing, not divorce necessarily the right way, but there's taking the emotion out of it. Unfortunately, it's so emotional driven, but if you can it's better to take your time and not rush and file and find the way that's best for you, because you're more likely, you're going to save more and make better decisions.
Absolutely. So I think one thing that often surprises people is when I call myself a divorce coach and then I tell people that I work with those who are contemplating divorce. And of course, they kind of roll their eyes and say, well, Kat, you must be telling them to get divorced. You're a divorce coach. And I actually do not do that. I actually have a pretty structured coaching program to help to make sure people are making the right decisions, because just like people get married for a lot of the wrong reasons, people often get divorced for the wrong reasons. And so I want to make sure that if that in fact is the path that you choose to go down, that you're going down it fully equipped, fully organized, and fully prepared to realize how it's going to impact your life, because it actually does impact everything. It impacts children, finances, where you live, your identity in the community, all of that. And then I also help people as they're going through the process and post-divorce as well. But as Kelly was saying, how we often work together, and really quickly, I'll share, like, we have a few cases that we work with where the client is dealing with a very difficult ex, or they're very emotional, or they're grieving, or they're angry or sad, and they're calling Kelly all the time, and they're spending a ton of money on attorney fees. And
not a ton, like I don't charge. It's not.
Well, but there's, and
they shouldn't be spending any, because it's not something I can give the answer to.
Right. So I try to help with people. I deal with the emotions, but I try to help them contain their emotions in such a way that they can start moving forward, and they can sit down with Kelly and literally just get down to the business of divorce, which is what my last post was about, because that's what you want to be doing with your attorney, is just handling the business part of it as much as possible. So it looks like we actually have a couple questions. So people, please send some in. Some of these actually came to me earlier too. So somebody says, this is like the big question that we probably always hear. I'm going to get a divorce. How much is it going to cost me?
$19.95. Special. No, Facebook Live special. No, so it's the same thing as before. Every single case is different. You can't. There's a range. Depends. Are you using somebody in the city, obviously, or somebody in the suburbs? That's a different hourly rate. Are you going mediation where you're sharing it? Or are you each hiring? So it's hard to say how much, what a price is. Some need subpoenas, some don't. It gets even as basic as some people will accept service and you're not even paying a sheriff or a constable and you're saving money that way. So it really, you can't really answer. It'd have to be, you'd have to know each. Right. It's going to be definitely probably at least $220 in Massachusetts for the filing fee. If you do it for yourself.
Right, absolutely.
That's probably the cheapest you could get it, the filing fee.
Yeah, and there's also different, I don't know if they call that unbundled services. Like, I've had some clients that have done mediation, and then there was a couple sticking points that they weren't able to agree to. So they each hired their own attorneys just to get through those two pieces, and then brought the paperwork to themselves to court. So there's, every step along the way, there's a decision that can be made regarding how much money you're going to spend.
Some people will go to mediation, and I've been in with clients that have I go in for one session, one topic, or I just review it. If you go, no matter who you go to, that's the mediator, or whether it's an attorney, as a mediator, you should always have somebody read it. Everybody needs to take it to another counsel, and I've done that. We're just reading, and that's fairly inexpensive, and that's part of when I do mediation.
Absolutely. I always recommend people do that. So you get your mediation agreement, and then just run it by an attorney and make sure you don't miss anything. Make sure it's a well-formed document, and all the I's are dotted.
Because it's peace of mind too. For a small amount of money for an hour of somebody's work. Peace of mind that your deal is fair.
Absolutely.
Important.
All right. So is that good, everyone? Should we move on to our next question? All right.
So far,
let's see.
I don't have very good records.
We have people joining. Okay, so this one says, my attorney tells me I can get out of paying child support if I just agree to a 50-50 parenting time.
Okay, so that also, every single answer, it's like law school. It depends. So your child support is now based on, there's a breakdown. There sort of always has been, and they just revised them, but it's how much time. So if it's 50-50, your child support, it's essentially figured out what mom would pay, or like parent one pays parent two, and then what parent two would pay parent one, and then you subtract the difference. But now, if you just go online, they're available online. If you just go on mass.gov under court forms, if there's the child support guidelines, and you can see it. It's based on gross income of each party, how much you pay. You get a deduction for health insurance, dental insurance, and any child care costs, and then it will just calculate it for you. And there's some deviations, but it's kind of hard.
And would you say that most states have a standard formula at this point, or?
I don't know. I know. So I've only worked for New Hampshire and Mass, and they both do, because it's just that they're doing a percentage. It's based on the number of children. Now it's based on the number of children over and under 18. So you get a reduction for every child that's over 18. It's 25%. So all that's done, but you can do that online. It's available.
So we're getting more people joining, which is great.
0 for 2 so far for my.
What do you mean?
Like I haven't answered one. Don't invite me to
okay, so somebody says, what do I do if? Do you feel? Oh, I don't want you to feel like this is intense. No. This should be relaxed. So the question is, what do I do if I want to mediate, but my ex absolutely refuses?
Then you don't get to mediate. Unfortunately, because mediation is 100% voluntary. You both have to. That's one of the biggest things, that it's voluntary. You both have to want to be there, and you both want to have to do the work, because the mediator is not doing it for you. A mediator is simply working to, like, it just is helping. It's trying to keep the lines of communication open, sort of to be. It's a neutral third party, but the decisions are all, and the working out the disagreements all belong to the parties. So it has to be. It's 100% voluntary, or it wouldn't work.
Right, absolutely. And not
unfortunately.
And so and I always tell people, like, not everybody can mediate, and that's okay. And I think what people get the message is that mediation is the only way to go.
Or that it's so much cheaper,
and it's not.
But
necessarily
it's not necessarily because
cheaper.
You're ending up with the same product, you're ending up with a separation agreement, and that's a pretty detailed document that's getting drafted. You're paying for the sessions. I mean, the same amount of, you're getting to the same end result, the same documents. So it's not, you can do it just as cheap if you're going with, I don't want to knock anything up, my like eggs thrown at my house by mediators. I mean, no, it just depends what's the best way.
Your situation.
You don't want to sit and talk about it, but you can do it as cheap with an attorney by coming in, drafting a separation agreement, and just going back and forth with the spouse.
Right. Yeah, so I was just like, sometimes when domestic violence is in the situation, it's not good for the parties to be sitting in a room together.
Right, and mediation, if there's any history of domestic violence or restraining orders,
right, you
wouldn't be able to. And then sometimes it's just too emotional. It's a lot easier. Somebody's talking to me, and I'm, where 2 attorneys are removed, or an attorney and then somebody that represents himself, they're removed. There's no emotion. I'm taking, So it makes it a little bit easier. Sometimes it's just too emotional, and that's the only reason.
Right. I think I had one of my clients recently was saying that she went to her 4-way, and she said she sat in one room and her soon-to-be ex sat in another room, and the attorneys went back and forth between the different rooms.
Right. And so in Massachusetts, a 4-way is, if you get to your pretrial conference, it's a court order that you have to meet or attempt to meet, unless there's a restraining order, active restraining order, but you would meet and try to hash out as many of the open issues as possible, and then that gets reported to the court to see what are the open issues and where each party stands. And so you can have, that's an example of, you can hire an attorney, and sometimes I've been hired and we just go right to mediation, and not mediation, but right to like a 3-way or a 4-way, where it's myself, my client, and the opposing party, and we just say, okay, here's the issues. And so it's the same thing as a mediation, but I have to make it clear that I represent the person I'm there with, and if they're alone, then they're, they have the right to go take that. That's when they would take it to another party, but you can go right to that 3-way or 4-way, and some people, they last 10 minutes, or they can last 8 hours till everything's resolved.
Right.
So yeah, you can be separate, because some people just cannot.
Right. So again, the more you're able to take the emotion out of it and logically make decisions, the cheaper it ends up being. I think that's probably across the board, regardless of which way you do it.
Right.
That's the way. And I typically recommend people to not do their own divorces, just because we've seen some pretty not well executed agreements.
Right. Well,
And then,
I would eventually end up working my dream job at Target if everyone did their own divorce. I wouldn't have it. I can finally
That's
go.
not why you're here. So,
No.
by the way, Kelly is a great mediator and attorney. And I think one of the good things that she does in mediation is she's fair, but she also toes the line. She doesn't let one of the parties get snowed.
No, it's just right. So and that's the other thing. There's a lot of times when I meet people, they'll say, "Okay, well, I'll have a consultation," and I try to make it clear before, and that's before you meet anybody that is a licensed mediator or is a divorce attorney, because it's sort of like one shot.
Mhm.
So if I meet one party and it's just purely because they want a consultation on divorce, then now I'm exempt. I cannot do mediation because then there would be a conflict because I've met with one. I can meet separate, but I meet separately knowing that that's the way that we're going. You know,
Thank you,
met
Deanna.
one knowing I'm going to meet another one.
Okay, so here, do you want to do a couple more questions? Hi, Deanna.
Sure.
She says hi. So what questions should I ask an attorney when I meet with them to see if they're the right match for me?
So I don't think it's necessarily the right questions. It's sort of just following your gut. Like who do you get along with? And it's the same. That's sort of what the whole reason of consultations, an attorney's doing the same thing to the client, because you spend a lot of time, you work together a lot, and it's a lot of times very heated. You know, it's
Right.
not normally like, let's go have a drink and talk about like this horrible like child custody. So you have to be able to somebody that you feel like you're being listened to and that you have a good understanding of how the practice works, because every lawyer is different, every practice is different. We all follow the same rules. And the procedure is the same, but the methodology of how, do you want somebody aggressive? Do you want somebody that's going to negotiate? It's just a matter of what you're like, you know, if I'm very hands-on, I don't like to leave people, because when it's a very emotional thing when you're getting divorced. And I try to make sure my thing is calling people within 24 hours. I always want to do that. Every lawyer has a different thing that they do on how they deal with people. You just have to find what fits, because you're spending a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And you're running the bus. So you have to feel comfortable to be able
Absolutely.
to tell them.
I even encourage my clients, I say, when you go to meet with an attorney, ask them, say, how do you prefer to be contacted? Are there times of the week that you prefer to receive an email from me, so that you understand pretty clearly upfront kind of what's going on? And then part of the coaching too is like, as a divorce coach, I'm not charging an attorney's fee, but I am available to people, as I say around the clock, but hello, I do sleep. But, if your ex is driving you crazy, or they're making accusations, or, it's just driving you bonkers, like, call me first, text me first, and I'll help you kind of go through that and figure out, like, what do we really need to pay attention to? Because I will tell you a large majority of it is just noise. And then you end up spending all this money fighting noise, and it's stuff that actually in the legal system, they don't really
unfortunately
care about. Yeah.
Well, an example is what we worked on. So we met somebody an example is whether or not you should take an asset, say, for instance, or if something's available. I can't tell somebody whether or not they should or shouldn't. That's not for an attorney to do it. I mean, we think we know everything. We sort of do. So we go to school long enough, but if I can tell you if you're entitled to that as a matter of law, as a matter of your case. But whether or not you should take that's when I ask people. I think you would talk to like somebody like Tony, that's for financial, or you would talk to Kat. Do you need this asset, and is it mentally or emotionally? Is this the right thing to you? What's long term? That's not something I can do. I just know what is available, and that's why it's nice to work, to be able to have a place to send somebody, because it is a great resource. It saves people a lot of money.
Yep. Okay, so next question is, I'm seeing if anyone's joining in here. So we have a lot of people joining in. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you for coming by. I know it's almost summer. So, okay, here, another question is, can my 14-year-old daughter say what she wants for the visitation plan?
So you can't go into court. The children are not that are involved are not allowed. They even 20 there was once an opposing counsel tried to bring in an affidavit from an adult emancipated 21-year-old child that wasn't going to college, and the judge lost it and was going to sanction it. So children, they try to keep them as far removed from the process as possible, but there are methods to do that. There's children can be interviewed by the probation department. An attorney would file a motion to be able to get that. They would just be interviewed alone. And then there's the guardian ad litem, which is like everybody's fear because they cost additional money, and they're not. People use them. It sort of is like a threat against people, but they do for the most part. Good work is done where a therapist or a social worker or an attorney is hired it's an additional cost, but they interview the parents separately, the children separately, and then witness the children inside the home with each parent to see, and they give a recommendation to custody. That's really the only ways to have, or if the child is able to get their own representation.
Do they still have the ARC program?
They do have it. It's just not. I haven't heard
hard to access a ton. Yeah. I mean, there at least used to be a program called Attorneys Representing Children, which was a free program, but I'm
not even sure that it's. I know that most people use probation, so I can look in if anybody wants that looked into. But it's probation, I know usually.
Okay, here is. Let me check the time. We're gonna do one more question, and then just see if anybody has any last things that they want to chip in. So we don't want to bore you guys. We're planning on making them about a half hour, so hopefully that's a good time. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to text or call Kelly or I. You have access to our information. So the last question is, how do I get through my divorce when I'm so rageful and angry at my ex? I can't even speak to him or her.
Okay, so that would be a time you would want to work with Kat, because you'd have to work with that, because that's when bad decisions get made. And I think the biggest one is, say, when children are off child support. So with child support with somebody, especially that is self-employed or works under the table, then it becomes now a battle of proving somebody's income. So what I try to show is that, okay, here's where, if somebody made $45,000 all the way in 10,000 increments. Me? Is he talking about me? I'm so loud already. So what you know?
Oh, we have to be louder? Is that what
you said? Yeah, that's what you said.
Okay.
So probably nobody wants to hear. So it's a matter of, are you going to pay $10,000 for an attorney to send subpoenas and do discovery and then another 20 to go to trial to prove somebody makes 60,000 when they claimed 40 all along, when that's going to change child support maybe 2,500 a year. So that's the biggest one. People, I don't care. It's the principle. It's the principle. It's the principle. But the principle costs a lot of money. You have to have a lot of money to be able to blow it on principle. And it's a matter of working with Kat and going and being able to be in a comfortable place to say, okay, I'm choosing to keep my money and not pay an attorney, and to accept this amount, knowing that I can always go back and modify it. You can go back now in Massachusetts. There's case law that if there's a change just by running it, you get to go. And you get to go to court, and they'll run the numbers, and it can be adjusted that way. But you don't want to be spending $10,000 to prove that somebody makes something that's going to get you an extra $250 a year. You'd be paying that back forever.
So I always share this story with people because I think it's such an example of the system. So when I went through my divorce, and of course it was lengthy and expensive, and the last day when we were in front of the judge, my ex's attorney walked, and often things are actually figured out in the hallways. Most things are figured out in the hallway. So my ex's attorney came up to my attorney and said, okay, we have a number I ended up keeping the house. We want her to buy out the house for $5,000. And so it actually wasn't my attorney. It was an assistant or associate of my attorney. So the associate says, you need to call the attorney and run that by him before you agree to the agreement. So when I called him, he says, yeah, that's too much. You shouldn't have to spend not $1 on buying him out of the house. That's ridiculous. But at the same time, Kat, you're out of your retainer. So if you come to my office Monday and give me $5,000, we're going to fight this so that you don't have to spend one dime on getting that house. And I was like, at this point, I'd rather give $5,000 to my ex-husband than
Right.
to my attorney. So, I mean, that's what I mean. There's sometimes
I tell
these like crazy things that that
Right.
happen, and so we just and that's part of what we do is we help people. And again, you know,
Somebody do that.
people are giving us good
Yeah.
things. But again, we want you to make really good, rational, logical decisions because this agreement that you have is really going to be with you until
Unless you're paying to redo it. That's
right. But that's
part of the
also a lot of
problem.
money.
Right.
So,
And you don't want to be paying, everyone hates court.
right.
So you don't want, not everybody, I guess. That was rude.
So, yeah, I mean, if you sign off an agreement and the agreement's horrible and it's unfair, you can't go back to court and say, hey, by the way, judge, this is really unfair. It's not really working in my life.
No. Aside from child support,
yeah.
you have to have a material change in circumstance for
Right.
anything.
And you have to prove that you have that
Right.
change. So it's not easy. So anyways, we're getting so it's so exciting, like seeing you guys react. So we just want to tell you a little bit about Vesta. Vesta is a team of professionals, like we said, helping people contemplating going through and post-divorce, and we host events in the community. So there's a divorce boot camp, which is an educational, you come and learn about the 4 main topics. You learn about legal, financial, real estate, and mental health. And then you're able to ask questions and answers. Resource night is a little bit more informal. That's where that's where the dating coach and the stylist and the trainers, and we're all kind of hanging out and eating teas and crackers and socializing. And you also can meet professionals that way, but you're meeting the whole team. We also have topic-specific workshops and retreats as well. We actually just had a retreat last weekend. So if you sign on, we will definitely share that information with you. We have an event coming up July 12th in Newburyport at Bentley's. It's 6 to 8:30, right? Yeah, July 12th.
Yeah.
And Heather Rogers is hosting us up there. So thank you so much, Heather. It's because it will be good to expand our support up into the North Shore, because sometimes, Andover is called the North Shore, but it's actually a little bit of a distance from the ocean.
Right,
So we're trying to get all bases covered. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And if you want information about our events, we can certainly share that with you as well. Heather gave us a thumbs up. Hi, Heather. Heather's got such great energy. She's awesome. She's got great energy. She is like raring to go. So I think that's it. Do you have any ending words?
No, I think you need to have a different segment the next time I'm here.
A different segment for you?
Yeah, because I'm like 0 and 5.
0 and 5 in what way?
The questions.
Oh, I just kept
saying, well, it depends.
Well, I mean, I think that is hard. I mean, that's Kelly and I see this too all the time. Someone will come in and they'll say, I'm divorcing my husband, and my best friend, she got a divorce, and this is how it happened. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean that that's how your divorce is going to go.
Don't listen to everyone else, because even if it could be your neighbors, and you have no idea what everybody has for assets, and nobody is going to disclose all that.
Right.
So
I mean, that's the one good thing with the team, although I think probably all of us on the team like to pretend that we all know everything. We don't. We all know specific things. But when you have a whole team around you,
right,
you're getting all the information, and then you're also able to like take in different professionals' opinions and voices, and then kind of sift through those and try to figure out what makes the most sense for you and your family, so that you're making some really smart, intelligent decisions.
Yes, and it's good because it helps. And like an example we always say is, you're able to speak to a mortgage person up front. We know lawyers, it's either you're refinancing, you're buying out, you're just selling it outright. Well, how are you even able to do that? You just can't slap that into an agreement, and then the time comes up, you're not able to do it, and then what happens?
Right. So often, and we talk about this all the time, your attorney says to you, that again, the house is yours, we're going to fight, you're going to get the house. And if you come into me, I'm going to sit down and make sure you can actually afford the house. Because if you buy out your ex and then 2-3 years go by and you can't afford your mortgage payments, or something breaks in the house and you can't afford that, now you have to pay real estate fees, and then you have to put it on the market. Then you're paying the taxes on it. So not that you can't keep the house, but I want to make sure that if that's the decision that you're going to make, you're going to meet with Tony, you're going to meet with some of our real estate agents, and you're going to make sure that that is absolutely the best decision for you and your kids, because your kids are impacted by that. All right, so we have been rambling on and on and on.
We're going to do like skits and stuff.
Yeah, next time maybe we'll like dance or like.
Oh, no.
So that's the thing. I will say the Vesta Nord team, we try to keep things like fun. We actually have
Right.
social events too. And, you know, you can't lose a sense of humor or
No,
right,
in trouble.
which is easy to do when you're going through the divorce process. And honestly, we just keep reminding you that you're going to get through it and that life can actually be better on the other end. And we will keep reminding you of that over and over and over again. So I guess that's it. Let me just double check and see if there's any, and I think that's about it. So again, send me divorce stories, private message me, contact Kelly if you have any legal questions. We are here for you, and that's about it.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.